Most people believe a shinobi's greatest enemy is the blade waiting in the dark or the assassin hiding in the shadows. But the deadliest enemy a warrior ever faces is the one living inside the mind. The soft, deceptive voice that whispers, "Not today, you're tired, take it easy." The voice that steals discipline long before the battle even begins. This was the enemy that held Raiden back long before he ever touched a weapon. Raiden wasn't weak. He wasn't lazy. He wasn't lacking potential. He was simply distracted, a mind trained by comfort, not challenge, a mind that avoided heat, tension, discomfort, and anything that felt unfamiliar, a mind that pulled him toward the easiest choice every time he attempted something meaningful. Just like you, he made promises to change. He wrote out goals. He swore that this time he would rise early, train harder, sharpen his discipline. But every attempt collapsed within hours. It wasn't motivation he lacked. It was mastery over his inner landscape. And until he learned that nothing else mattered. His first real lesson came from the simplest test in the entire Shinobi Academy, the Trial of Dawn. Wake before sunrise. Sit in silence for 1 hour. No movement, no speaking, no escape. To most, it sounded easy. For Raiden, it became the mirror that exposed everything inside him. He woke on time. But instead of rising immediately, he allowed himself a few extra seconds in bed. A small indulgence, a harmless delay. His mind whispered, "You have time. Rest is good. Just a moment longer." That moment became a minute, then 10. By the time he finally sat up, the sun had already broken over the mountains. The trial was lost before he even began. When the master approached him, he didn't yell or scold. He simply said, "A warrior who loses to his pillow will lose to everything else." Those words hit Raiden harder than any punishment. Because he knew the truth, he didn't lose to the task. He lost to the voice inside him. The imported text you shared speaks about the mind resisting discomfort. The shinobi understood this deeply. They believe the untrained mind is like a forest full of bandits, impulses, fears, desires, doubts, all attacking the moment you attempt something difficult. They gave these inner forces a name, the inner saboteur. That voice appears whenever you try to grow. It pushes you toward distraction, comfort, and escape. It disguises weakness as logic, avoidance as rest, delay as self-care. Raiden thought willpower alone would defeat it, but willpower cracks. Motivation fades. Determination collapses when your mind becomes a battlefield. You cannot force yourself into discipline through brute strength. You must understand the enemy before you fight it. And for the first time in his life, Raiden began observing his own mind with clarity. He noticed the moment excuses formed. He noticed how discomfort made him search for escape. He noticed how quickly his mind invented reasons to avoid the hard path. He realized his mind wasn't broken. It was simply trained incorrectly. It was protecting his comfort, even if that comfort destroyed his potential. The ancient shinobi taught that awareness is the first blade. You cannot defeat an enemy you refuse to see. So the master brought Raiden to the silent hall, a stone chamber meant to strip away the outside world and confront the storms inside. He told him, "Do not try to control your thoughts. Watch them until they lose their power." Raiden sat in the quiet. His mind screamed. Thoughts pushed and pulled him. Doubt, desire, distraction, fear, noise without meaning. But for the first time, he didn't chase anything. He simply observed. And slowly, something unexpected happened. The thoughts didn't become quieter. They simply stopped controlling him. They rose and fell like waves. They passed like leaves drifting in a river. This was his first real taste of a disciplined mind. Not empty, but unattached. Not silent, but unshaken. The master explained, "Discipline is not killing distraction. It is acting despite distraction." Raiden realized he had spent his whole life trying to force his mind into obedience, when the true path was learning to detach from the chaos inside it. He also realized something else. The soft voice that held him back wasn't evil. It was trying to protect him from discomfort. But the shinobi knew a deeper truth. Growth is discomfort. Strength is discomfort. Transformation is discomfort. To avoid discomfort is to avoid your own becoming. This was the first shift Raiden needed. He didn't suddenly become disciplined. He didn't suddenly transform. But he stopped fighting the wrong enemy. He saw the battlefield clearly for the first time, and that clarity changed everything. From that day on, he approached his mind not as a weakness to crush, but as a wild force to understand. He observed the excuses without becoming them. He noticed the impulses without following them. He became aware of the subtle ways his mind sabotaged him, and in that awareness, he found the doorway to the warrior's path. The journey ahead would demand more from him: mastery over emotion, mastery over time, mastery over action. But all of it began here. With this first shift, the enemy inside was no longer invisible. And that is the same doorway you now stand before. If anything in this journey resonates with you, take a moment to tap the like button. It helps this story reach the people who need it most. Raiden thought that understanding his inner enemy would immediately make the path easier. But the truth was harsher. Awareness didn't silence the resistance. It only revealed how deep it ran. The mind he thought he had control over wasn't just restless. It was layered, ancient, and conditioned by years of choosing comfort over challenge. The more he observed it, the more he realized how often he avoided the very actions that would have shaped him into the warrior he wanted to become. The master saw the struggle written across his face. So one morning, without warning, he ordered Raiden to follow him into the mist-covered valley behind the academy. They walked in silence for hours until they reached a flowing river. The water was calm at first glance, but beneath the surface was a silent, relentless current that pushed everything in one direction. This, the master said, pointing at the moving water, is the mind, always flowing, always pulling. You cannot push against it forever. Raiden watched as broken leaf drifted effortlessly with the current, while stone sitting still beneath the water remained unmoved. The master continued, most people drown because they resist the flow. They exhaust themselves fighting it. But a shinobi survives because he does not resist. He moves with life, not against it. Raiden recalled a passage he had once heard about Eastern philosophy, similar to how the imported script describes the idea of resistance being the mind's natural reaction to discomfort. But the shinobi view was sharper, more practical, more brutal. It wasn't just about resisting discomfort, it was about resisting reality itself. The master stepped into the water and signaled Raiden to follow. The current pulled at their legs immediately. Raiden felt a subtle panic rise inside his chest. The instinct to stiffen, brace, and fight the pull was automatic. The master, however, relaxed completely. Instead of fighting the river's force, he flowed with it, stepping lightly, shifting his balance as if dancing with the water rather than confronting it. Raiden tried to mimic him, but his body tensed with every step. Your fear is resistance, the master said without turning. Your hesitation is resistance. Your urge to stay comfortable is resistance. You think discipline is strength, but it is first acceptance. Raiden swallowed the words. Acceptance felt like surrender. But the master explained, to resist life is to suffer twice, once for the reality itself, and once for wanting it to be different. They remained in the water until Raiden's legs trembled. When they finally stepped out, he felt something shift internally. Not a breakthrough, but a crack, the beginning of a doorway opening. Over the next weeks, the master pushed Raiden through tasks designed to break his habit of resisting life. When it rained, Raiden trained without shelter. When the nights were cold, he meditated outside until dawn. When exhaustion hit, he didn't rest immediately. He observed it, breathed through it, understood it. The purpose wasn't physical. It was psychological. It was to teach him that discomfort is not an enemy. It is a message, a teacher, a test that reveals who you are beneath the layers of excuses the mind creates. One night, while sitting beneath the dim lantern lights of the silent hall, Raiden asked the master, why do I resist everything? Even small tasks, even things I want to do. The master didn't answer directly. Instead, he placed a candle between them and blew it out. Darkness consumed the room. Describe the darkness, he said. Raiden hesitated. I don't know. I can't see anything. Exactly, the master replied. The mind fears what it cannot see. Every task you avoid is only dark because you have not stepped into it. Raiden realized then that resistance wasn't only about discomfort, it was also about uncertainty. The mind protects itself by avoiding anything unclear, unpredictable, or unfamiliar. Even the tasks he wanted to do, training, discipline, self-mastery, were shrouded in uncertainty, so his mind rejected them before he even began. The master lit the candle again. The flame returned quietly, as if it had never left. When you step into the darkness, he said, it becomes light. This small moment stayed with Raiden. It echoed through his meditations and through his struggles. He began to understand that resistance fades not by conquering it, but by walking through it, leaning into discomfort, breathing into uncertainty, allowing challenge to be part of the path rather than something that must be defeated first. One evening, Raiden sat alone overlooking the academy courtyard. The moon hung low in the sky, casting pale silver light over the stone paths. For the first time, he didn't feel the inner chaos screaming for distraction. His thoughts were there, loud at times, soft at others, but he wasn't wrapped inside them anymore. He watched them, observed them, let them flow like the river. And without realizing it, he acted. He rose, picked up his training staff, walked into the courtyard, and began to practice. Not out of motivation, not out of pressure, not out of guilt, but simply because the resistance was no longer in control. His movements were unsteady at first, but there was intention in each strike, each step, each breath. The master watched quietly from the shadows, saying nothing, but a subtle satisfaction passed over his eyes. This was the beginning of Raiden acting from alignment rather than struggle. The next morning, Raiden woke before the sunrise, not for a trial, not because he had to, but because something inside him had shifted. He sat in silence as the sky turned blue. He let the thoughts rise and fall without grabbing onto any of them. He felt the urge to escape, but didn't move. By the time the first ray of sunlight touched the horizon, he felt a clarity he had never experienced before. The path was still long, his discipline still fragile, his mind still wild. But he had crossed the first threshold. He was no longer fighting life. He was beginning to flow with it. And for Shinobi, that is a moment the transformation truly begins. Raiden's progress was real, but fragile. He had learned to observe his thoughts without drowning in them, and he had begun flowing with discomfort instead of fighting it. Yet the master knew something Raiden did not. Clarity without action eventually collapses. A mind can be calm, but if the warrior never steps onto the battlefield, that calmness becomes an illusion. So the master waited for the right moment to give Raiden the final lesson, the one that separates ordinary men from disciplined warriors. It arrived on a quiet morning when fog curled around the academy grounds like slow-moving smoke. Raiden was practicing with wooden blades when the master approached him and placed a small stone bowl at his feet. Inside was a single seed. This, the master said, is your final training. Raiden frowned. He expected a challenge involving strength, speed, or endurance. A seed felt almost insulting, but the master was never careless. When he gave something simple, it meant the lesson hid beneath the surface. You will plant this seed, the master said. You will water it every day. You will protect it from storms, birds, and cold nights. And you will not harvest the plant until it is fully grown. Not a day earlier. Raiden tried to understand the meaning behind this task, but the master simply walked away. For the first few days, Raiden treated the task like a chore. He planted the seed behind the academy, near the bamboo grove. He watered it. He checked the soil. He waited, but nothing happened. The ground looked the same. The seed remained invisible. A week passed. Then two. Still nothing. Raiden started to feel restless. He began to question whether the seed was even alive. Maybe it was defective. Maybe the soil was wrong. Maybe the entire task was pointless. His mind tried to convince him the same way it once convinced him to skip training or delay action. This isn't working. You should stop. One cold night, he nearly gave up. He stared at the patch of soil and felt a familiar impatience rising inside him, a desire for fast results, quick transformation, instant reward. The same desire that had destroyed his discipline in the past. But something stopped him. He remembered the river. He remembered the darkness of the silent hole. He remembered the voice that once controlled him. He knelt beside the soil and whispered, "I will wait." The next morning, nothing changed, yet something had shifted inside him. There was no resistance, no frustration, just presence, doing what needed to be done without demanding that life move on his schedule. Days passed. Then weeks more. Every morning, Raiden took care of the seed. Sometimes with energy, sometimes with fatigue, sometimes with complete stillness. The task became a meditation, a mirror for his own internal patience. Until one morning, after nearly a month, he saw it, a small green sprout breaking through the surface. It was tiny, fragile, unremarkable, but Raiden felt an emotion he didn't expect: gratitude. The master appeared beside him without Raiden noticing. "You see the lesson?" Raiden nodded slowly. "Growth does not reveal itself right away." The master shook his head. "No, the true lesson is that your frustration was never with the seed, it was with your own mind." Raiden felt the truth of the words hit him. The growing plant had not been slow, Raiden had been impatient. The soil had not been unproductive, Raiden's expectations had been unrealistic. The task had not been pointless, Raiden had been unable to tolerate progress he could not immediately see. The master continued, "You want transformation to happen quickly, but a warrior does not bloom because he forces himself to. He blooms because he takes correct action long enough for the results to appear." Raiden understood now. The quiet practices, the difficult training, the silent mornings, they had not failed. They had simply not yet reached a point where the results were visible. Discipline grows the same way a seed does, quietly, slowly, beneath the surface. The sprout before him was small, but it was real. It existed because he showed up every day, even when he felt nothing happening, even when his mind offered excuses, even when progress was invisible. This was the final shinobi principle he had been missing, the art of deliberate action over long periods of time. Later that evening, the master led Raiden to the dojo for the final time. "Your mind will resist again," he said. "It will create new excuses. It will try to pull you back into old patterns. But now you know that action is stronger than thought. When your mind pulls you away, move your feet toward the task anyway." Raiden bowed deeply. "And if I fail again?" The master smiled. "Then you follow the way of the seed. You begin again the next day, and the next, and the next. That is how warriors are built." That night, Raiden returned to the courtyard where he once practiced awkwardly under the moon. But this time he didn't wait for motivation. He didn't wait for clarity. He didn't wait for the perfect moment or for his mind to agree with him. He simply acted. There was no resistance, not because it disappeared, but because it had lost its power. His thoughts still drifted through him, but none of them dictated his actions anymore. The old patterns were still there, but they no longer ruled him. He trained not to fight the mind, but to move with life, even when life demanded patience, discomfort, or uncertainty. And in this quiet moment, Raiden became something he had chased for years, disciplined not by force, but by understanding. Free not because the mind had become silent, but because he had learned to move through the noise. A true shinobi is not the one who feels no resistance. A true shinobi is the one who acts anyway. And now that you've walked through the entire journey with Raiden, I'd like to hear from you. Tell me in the comments which part of this story hit you the hardest, the resistance, the flow, or the patience.